When looking for the king of podcasts, you're at the wrong channel.
Well, excuse me!
Looking for good ideas for life? You're far from good hands.
Hey, bud, what's your problem?
If you think the listener is always right, you're far from the right place.
Out of order! Even in the future, nothing works!
Hosted by a Northeasterner by birth, but a rebel by choice.
Are you threatening me?
If you want a host that floats between love and madness,
and we know the night is always gonna be here anyway. Thinking of you's working up my appetite. Looking forward to a little afternoon delight.
then play on and listen to Crazy Train Radio.
All right, guys, listen to this blues riff and B. Watch me for the changes and try and keep up, okay?
Warning, creators of this game do understand the subject matter may be offensive to some, but they do honor the families and people that have been affected by these real-life tragedies that these individuals have caused. Want to play a game?
Oh, yeah!
Lover of true crime?
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, we got an interesting game for you to check out.
Wow.
With the mashup of influences such as horror movies, collecting cards, and RPGs.
What?
Led to giving birth to an incredible creation of this game, Killers, the card game.
You are all I killed with now.
This game is a collectible trading card game featuring some of the most infamous killers, with tidbits of trivia on the back of each card to help you learn some insight to each criminal.
Who the hell are you?
Let's not forget, during the game, cops will be chasing you and these criminals.
I'm a cop, you idiot!
However, check out their website listed through all social media today, which can be found under Killers, the card game.
Am I on the internet?
I want to play a game.
Hey everybody, this is Dan Harary, Hollywood publicist, author. Check it out, Crazy Train Radio.
Hey folks, it's your least favorite host in the podcast world, the Croc, Jonathan Steele. And boy, do we have a good one for you today. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this next guest is a man of my own heart because he was born and raised in Asbury Park, New Jersey, which for the music lovers who listen might be familiar with that town. But he also came from a unique household, which we'll get into, and has spent over 40 years in the entertainment world as a PR rep, and he has a new book out, Flirting with Fame. Dan Harary.
Harary. I'm doing good, thanks, man.
So, first and foremost, the book. What's the response been so far?
It's been great. It actually came out last summer, so it's been about a year now. And a lot of people in Hollywood wrote to me and enjoyed my stories. A lot of my stories are funny or offbeat or off the wall. You know, I've met and worked with dozens and dozens of very, very famous people. And Some of them were just, straight working with them and not really bonding with them. And others are very funny or amusing little moments in time that I had with them. But Hollywood seems to like it. It's selling well. I got a lot of press when it came out last summer. I was in Newsweek magazine and the Hollywood Reporter, the Village Voice, the LA Times. So it's been a fun ride. It was just a fun book for me. It's my career memoir is what it is.
Absolutely. And before we get more into it, I was interested in putting my notes together, and I guess the timing seemed to work out because we recently did a episode on UFO research and things like that, and I saw you had an interest in that kind of stuff. So, Where did that interest for you begin?
That's funny. Well, this is my other book. My other book is called After They Came, that just came out in March this year. And this is a science fiction novel, benevolent aliens who come to Earth in the near future to save mankind. My interest in that book is that in 1970, I had a remarkable UFO sighting with my late father. I was 14 and we saw a big silver UFO, like letter V, like Victor, hovering above my father's car one day. He was driving me home from school. And we both went out of the car and looked at it, and I was jumping up and down because it was so exciting. And my dad looked at it, Jonathan, like he knew what it was. So it turns out, I later found out what my dad did for a living. My dad invented drones and missiles for the Army. He was an electronics engineer for 45 years for the Army. And after he died, I had a vision of that 1970 sighting, and I had forgotten about it for 47 years. And it came back to me one day after my dad died. And I called my mother, and I said, did Dad ever talk about UFOs in his job? And she said, no, but in the early 50s, they took him into the vaults at this Army base and showed him something top secret. And she said he came home all nervous and shaky, and he was never the same. And he said, I saw something today I could never tell you or anyone about as long as I live. And he never did. But I think my dad knew about recovered alien technology because the government has had that since the Roswell crash in 1947. And I believe the craft my father and I saw together was a man-made military drone. I really do think that's what it was. And I believe, and I know he knew what it was because he looked at it like he'd seen it 1,000 times before. So that inspired me to write that book. And the last 4 months, I've become like a darling of the UFO research community. I've made friends with some of the top UFO researchers in the world. And I've been promoting it at some UFO research conventions and getting tremendous reviews. So professionally, I'm a Hollywood publicist, and my personal passion and hobby is studying ufology.
Well, I don't know if you know the name, but I definitely want to connect you with him, is Tim Schwartz, who is an author and writer and all that.
He interviewed me within the last few months. He interviewed me already.
Okay, but I will mention it to Tim because I talk frequently with him since we had him on. That,
yeah.
I would mention your name. So,
sure. Okay.
But for the books, not both books, you actually have 4 out, including the one we're talking about today.
Three exist. My second book is about sex addiction. I was a sex addict for 20 years after my divorce. And it's not always as funny or enthralling as one might think when you're addicted to anything. So that book is called Carrots, and it's about how I overcame my sex addiction. That's the second book. My fourth book comes out in March next year called My Paranormal Life. And that's about ghosts and poltergeists and angelic voices and things I've manifested and supernatural things that have happened to me since I was 5 years old. I've had a lot of just weird things that are hard to explain happen. So that's that book next March.
Yes, but as I was going to say is I will put your Amazon links out there for people to check out all the books. But, since you brought that up, the sex addiction, and I'm not doing it to poke fun or anything like that, because like you said, addiction can be tough for whatever it is. But, and I don't know when that time period was, but
92 to 2012.
Okay, so you did have some of that crossover where I'm thinking is with this thing called the internet and access to things and stuff.
Yes.
Would you say that hurt or, really did it hurt the addiction, I guess you would say, because there was access to more things because, obviously back in the day, there was these whole, and there still exists in somewhat like the peep show houses you would go to and you put the quarter in and, yada, yada, yada.
Well, you're right. When I got divorced in 92 and my kids were 2 and 4 years old, I had little kids. And the digital age had not yet kicked in. In fact, this is kind of funny now looking back. When I got divorced, I put an ad in the LA Times newspaper, a print ad in the LA Times News. It was free. They had a dating page once a week called Dateline. And I put an ad in there and I just said, a single white male, 36, funny, witty, and warm, seeking sexy, attractive female. And I got, I think, 100 responses from that one ad. So I dated the first few years of my post-divorce era from the LA Times, from a print ad. I've not really been addicted to like online porn. I went to Sex Addicts Anonymous for years, and that helped me mellow out and quiet down the addiction. Anyone who's a sex addict, I strongly suggest, and this is in my book, but I suggest 2 things. One is find a good sex therapist who you can unburden yourself with and tell them anything. And because there's a lot of shame and guilt involved with sex addiction, as there would be with drug addiction or maybe alcoholism. But you have to have someone you trust and who knows what they're talking about to unburden yourself and share your secrets with. And I had that person years ago, and then she told me about Sex Addicts Anonymous, SAA, and I used to go to meetings there. And there were guys in there, man, that were hardcore people like sex just completely ran their lives and ruined their lives. They lost jobs, they lost their wives, they lost their homes, they were living in their cars. They lost access to their children. Some real heavy stuff. For me personally, I was making a lot of money in that era, and I was spending a tremendous amount of money on my addiction. I would be dating, real women, taking them out to the most expensive restaurants I could find. And concurrently, I'd be with, highly expensive call girls coming to my house. So it was unhealthy for me financially, to be honest. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on that, which I wish I had now, because now I'm much older.
Yeah.
To answer your question, the internet for me was not, it wasn't the heart of my sex addiction. My sex addiction started long before there was an internet.
Yeah. But for anybody that has any kind of addiction of any sort, so like you said, Dan, don't be afraid to ask for help, but from the right people.
Right. That's exactly true.
I want to go back because you mentioned your dad and his career and stuff. Like I said, you came from a unique family in the intro, and Dad played the trumpet as well with big bands like Glenn Miller and such, and Mom was a teacher, but she had a passion for singing. Right. So was it their hobbies or whatever you want to call it is what fed you into learning the drums and the piano and such?
Great question. My father played the trombone, not the trumpet.
Excuse me.
It's okay. My both of my parents were very skilled musicians. Like we said, my dad played the trombone from like the age of 10, I think, his whole entire life. But he was an electronics engineer for the Army. That was his job. But his passion was playing the trombone in big bands, which he did for most of his life. So I used to go see my dad perform in bands and orchestras and marching bands, as a little kid, all through little kid and in high school. And even in college, I saw some of his shows. Concurrently, my mother was a school teacher. She later became a probation officer. But my mother was a gifted, and she's still alive. My dad passed. My mother is a singer, an actress, a pianist, guitar player, poet, artist. And my mother wrote plays. My mother wrote, directed, and starred in plays my whole childhood and teen years. So my parents were very theatrical. And I saw them perform on stage, countless times. For me personally, when I was 7, they gave me piano lessons, 7 to 10, because they were musicians. They wanted me to be a musician, and my 2 younger brothers are also musicians. So I played the piano from 7 to 10. And then a funny thing happened in 1966, which is the Monkees came on TV, on NBC, September 1966. And I fell in love with the Monkees. And especially Mickey Dolenz, the drummer. I was just fascinated to see a drummer on TV once a week doing rock and roll. Blew my mind. So I asked my parents if I could play the drums, and they said yes, but you have to play piano as well. So I did both for years, and then I said, you know what? I'm a drummer. I said, I'm not playing piano. I'm a drummer. I've been a drummer. In fact, you could see those are my electronics.
You got your kit here.
Yeah, I still play. So I've been a drummer since 1966. I just turned 67 the other day. So
happy birthday.
Thank you. So 57 years I've been playing the drum.
So obviously you mentioned Mickey and the Monkees and such, but I know from doing a little homework that you are a rocker at heart. So who is your favorite drummer of all time?
It's a great question, and the answer is it's a tie. It's a tie between Buddy Rich, who I saw perform 3 times, and who I met in person a few weeks before he died. I met Buddy Rich. It happened to be at a toy store, a children's toy store. My wife and I were buying a gift for a friend, and it was just me and my wife, the sales lady, and I look over to the side, and Buddy Rich is there by himself playing a little toy xylophone. And I was like, oh, holy God, Buddy Rich? I couldn't believe it. Greatest drummer that ever lived. So I went up to him. I said, hi, Mr. Rich, I'm Dan. I said, I've seen you perform live. I said, you're the greatest drummer that ever lived. And he looks up, he goes, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. So Buddy Rich, and then tied with my other favorite is Phil Collins from Genesis. Not only is Phil Collins a great singer and a great songwriter, but Phil Collins is one of the most phenomenal drummers that I've ever heard. He does things on the records that just absolutely blow me away to this day. And I got a chance to meet him briefly at a Who concert backstage. And I said, Phil, you and Buddy Rich are my 2 favorite drummers of all time. He goes, yeah, that's cool. Thanks, man. So Buddy Rich and Phil Collins, different eras, different styles, both cream of technique, and the things that they did, nobody else, in my opinion, can ever touch those 2 guys.
It's funny that you mentioned about seeing Buddy at the store playing the toy xylophone and all, and made me think of I don't want to drop names, but people who listen will know who I'm talking about. There's a musician I became friendly with who his main thing is piano. And he says anytime, it doesn't matter where he's at. If he sees it at a store, a mall, walking through a hotel lobby, he can't help but find himself to go over and strike a couple keys. It's like I'm like, dude, don't you want to separate yourself from it when you're not, you know what I mean? When you're not touring or recording or whatever the case is. He goes, no, I just love it that, I gotta, tinker with it.
That's literally what Buddy Rich, he was literally tinkering with a little baby toy xylophone. Greatest drummer, the greatest percussionist in the history of the world, happened to be playing a toy kid's xylophone when I was in that store. And it really was, it was a wonderful moment. It really was quite wonderful.
Obviously, fast forward some, you went to Boston University and ironically were there at the same time, allegedly, as one Howard Stern, who I'm a fan of. Did you know Howard at all? Did you cross paths or?
Howard Stern was 2 years older than me. He went to Boston University School of Communications, and he graduated in 76. I went to Boston University School of Communications. I graduated in 78. We had 1 year when we were both literally in the same school at the same time. And I saw him in the hallways walking by because he was like, I think he's like 6'3" or 6'4". He's 6'5". He's incredibly tall.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember him walking through the halls, and friends of mine said, oh, there's that guy, Howard Stern. He has a very funny radio show on early in the morning. And I said, yeah, I don't know. I think he was on 6 to 8 a.m. And I said, I'm not waking up that early. I never, I'm a sleeper. I like sleeping. I never woke up early. I never heard Howard on the radio while we were at BU together. So cut to 20 years later in Hollywood, I was representing Robert Englund, who people know as Freddy Krueger from the Nightmare on Elm Street, right?
Welcome to prime time, bitch!
So I got Robert Englund on the Howard Stern radio show.
Hey now.
This was in 1987. And Howard in those days was just, he was very well known on the East Coast, but he wasn't nationally famous. This is before his show went national. I booked him on Howard, and Howard used to come out to Hollywood once a year in the 80s to interview for Hollywood celebrities at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, across the street from the Chinese Theater. So Robert Englund and I were there with Howard, and I said, hey, Howard, I went to BU. He goes, oh, yeah? When were you there? And I told him, and he goes, well, I'm older than you. I said, I know. And he said to me, did we ever party together or did we hang out together? I said, no. I said, I was 2 years younger than you. I said, we crossed paths in the school, but I said, we didn't hang out. And then I have a picture that I took of Howard and Robert Englund together. And then Baba Booey took a picture of me and Robert Englund and my friend who was visiting. But I didn't ask Howard to be in the picture, which one of my big regrets in life, because we didn't know he'd become famous. I didn't think he'd be famous. So I could have had a picture of me with Freddy Krueger and Howard Stern easily because Baba Booey shot the picture.
Baba Booey.
But I didn't think of it because he wasn't famous then.
Yeah, and we have a big horror audience, and I talked to Robert on a couple of occasions, not once on air, but just a couple, exchanges of emails and stuff, and with Nancy, his wife, and
he's
great people.
He's a very sweet guy, very intense guy. He and I hung out together quite a bit that year. So yeah, I really liked him very much. He was a good guy.
Yeah. Robert is, and you would probably notice even back then, Robert is a storyteller. And it's one of those, I could sit back, pour a drink, and just be like, hey, Robert, what about, and let him run.
He's met everybody. Here's a funny story. I was at his house once, and I happened to mention I was also representing Sid Caesar. At the time, I was working with Robert. I was Sid Caesar's publicist as well, and Jay Leno's too, before Jay Leno was really famous. And Robert Englund goes, Dan, he goes, you know Sid Caesar? He goes, I love Sid Caesar. Sid Caesar's my favorite comedian of all times. So Robert gets off a chair in his living room, runs into his den, comes back, and he hands me a TV guide from 1957 that has Sid Caesar on the cover of the TV Guide. And he goes, if I give this to you, will you get Sid Caesar to sign this for me? I said, yeah. So I forget the occasion. Sid Caesar and I were at some event somewhere, and we ended up in the men's room together, urinating. And I said, hey, Sid, can you sign this TV Guide for one of my clients? He's an actor. He goes, sure. So he signed it to Robert Englund, best wishes. He didn't know Freddy Krueger. Sid Caesar doesn't know from Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
But you should have seen Robert's face. Like, Dan, you got me Sid Caesar's on it. Like, it was like if I had met Paul McCartney. That's how it was for him. It was really cool. That was a funny story.
I'm going to have to email Nancy and ask about that, see if he still has that. But
I would think he would still have it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because and I'm probably sure I'll get a phone call and text long story about it. And from his perspective, that's for sure. But that's a good thing. So, like I said, you're an Asbury Park guy, and you were a stage manager and lighting director.
That's right.
And you happened to work with Springsteen early in his career there at Sunshine Inn Rocks concert venue. So what was that like? Did you realize Bruce was going to be as big as he was back then?
That's a great question. So in 1972, my best friend and I saw Bruce at the Jewish Y. It was called the YMHA. It was a Jewish YMHA. We were in the front row. Tickets were $1. It was the Bruce Springsteen band. And the flyer, which I wish I had saved, Jonathan, the flyer said Bruce Springsteen, Stein. It was misspelled. We thought he was Jewish because it said Springsteen. That flyer's got to be worth money. Now, I remember clearly looking at it laughing because I knew they spelled it wrong. And he played really loud rock. It wasn't original stuff. It was just loud, whatever it was. And after 3 or 4 songs, I said, I'm out. And I walked home because it was hard. I hated it. I think it was him, Miami Steve, Gary Talent, probably Vinny on drums. But it was just loud, you know? So I walked home and I said, that was awful. 1 year later was February 73. I'm at the Sunshine Inn. So my friend Steve and I used to work at the Sunshine Inn after school. We rode our bikes there. We didn't drive. And we ran the stage crew for all the bands. And we ran the lighting for all the bands. And then after they left, we packed them up, put their amps back into the trucks and stuff. So I was at the Sunshine Inn selling tickets. This was my after school job. And there's a knock on the door, and I open the door, and he's standing there with a guitar in one hand, and he's holding his girlfriend's hand in the other. And I looked at him, I go, are you Bruce Springsteen? And he goes, yeah, man, that's me. So I said, okay, come on in. So he came in, we shook hands. I led him to the stage. And Vinny, Steve, Gary Talent, and Danny Federici were setting up their equipment in there. And Clarence walked in, and he, with his sax, he goes, sorry, I'm late. I just got out of jail. He goes, I was late. I was behind on my child support payments. So Clarence had literally just joined the group. My friend Steve and I were on the stage, and I'm 2 feet from Bruce, and they're rehearsing. They did, maybe 3 or 4 songs just as a sound check on rehearsal. This is the night before the concert. And it was the week Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey, his first album. It was the same week that album came out. And he did some of those songs. So anyway, the next night we did the lights for him and packed up his gear at the end and all. At the end, my friend Steve said, Bruce, did you like the light show? He goes, hey, you cats were incredible. Now, I was into Zeppelin, Cream, Mountain, The Who, Humble Pie, Allman Brothers. That's who I was into in 73. I wasn't into Bruce's, Madman, Bummers, Drummers, and Indians in the Summer, Blinded by the Light. I had no idea what he was talking about. I had no clue. We had a mutual friend named Eric who lives in San Diego today. And Eric from high school used to say, you guys, Bruce Springsteen's going to be the Beatles. Bruce Springsteen's going to be the Beatles. And my friend Steve and I would laugh at him. Like, yeah, right. Sure, absolutely. Because we didn't appreciate what he was doing then. We weren't into it. So did I foresee it? Not at all. I used to see Bruce on the beach. I saw him at bars. I saw him hitchhiking. I was in the car with my mother once at the beach. She picked me up. Bruce was hitchhiking with his guitar and thumb. And I said, Ma, you see that guy over there? His name is Bruce Springsteen. He thinks he's a rock star. And my mother and I laughed as we drove past him. So that'll tell you what I thought of Bruce in that era. Of course, he went on to become the Beatles, and that was rather amazing that he pulled that off. But I never foresaw that at all. My friend Eric did.
Well, so obviously you've done many different things with the Publicist hat on. You were in-house with a Playboy channel. You worked with Columbia Pictures Television.
Right.
You worked with some of the bigger agencies throughout your time. But then you started Asbury PR agency in 96, around, what was it, your 40th birthday?
Exactly right. Yes, exactly correct.
So with what do you focus on now with Asbury PR?
Well, when I started, I kind of created a niche in 96 when I started my own business. I was representing a lot of special effects companies then. Special effects, animation, graphics, music, and movie trailer companies. So my clients were the artisans, or the craftsmen and the artisans behind the scenes of movies and TV shows. It wasn't the Spielbergs. It was the, like the ILM type behind the scenes visual effects people. And no one was really doing that. I helped to pioneer. I would say that I helped to pioneer PR for the visual effects community, because nobody was doing it when I was. I just was meeting these visual effects people at parties, and they were asking me to be their publicist. And I said, sure, I'll help. We'll figure it out together. So when I started, I had dozens of the top crafts, artists, and companies in Hollywood. And that's what put me on the map. Then along the way, I got some theme park companies, guys who designed and built theme parks around the world. I got that. Then I got music companies, people that did music for films and TV shows. And I had probably every major music production company in Hollywood. In the last couple of years, I segued into during COVID. I got very lucky. During COVID, I hooked up with some very large, famous restaurants in Hollywood. I represent two of the biggest restaurants in Los Angeles right now. I've had them for 4 years. And it's not dissimilar to a movie or a TV show. A restaurant has new dishes and new people and parties and events and milestones. I have a Mexican restaurant now. They just turned 100. And I got them a street named after them a few months ago. We did an unveiling. I got a street named for them. It was on all the local TV stations. So I'm PR-wise, I've done everything from Jay Leno, Sid Caesar, Milton Berle, Robert Englund, to authors, lawyers, restaurants, books, plays, live theater. I worked with Jack Black on he did Jesus Christ Superstar with Jack Black a few years ago. So I'm very versatile. Not every Hollywood publicist is very versatile. I pride myself on that. Most Hollywood publicists will do like celebrities. They just handle celebrities, or they'll just handle companies, or they'll just handle authors, or they'll just handle artists. Because in this day and age, PR has become very siloed, I would say. People just focus. But the way I came up through the ranks, I've represented porn stars and models, pretty much everything. I came through Playboy to Columbia Pictures to Jay Leno getting the Tonight Show, to major Hollywood black tie events, and then I launched my own thing. So I have a very circuitous route that I took. It'd be very hard to follow my path. But to answer your question, I'm versatile. I'll take any client that comes along that is of interest to me.
Well, obviously, I have a understanding of what you do, being I've done this for 11 years and have an education prior to that and all of the field and fields. But what is something from the PR side of things that many people, a la the average citizen, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, don't understand what you guys do?
Well, that's a funny question because my mother to this day doesn't understand what I do. I mean, some people think a publicist is a publisher of books, right? Publicist, publisher. There are people who, oh, you publish books. No, that's what a publisher does. Oh, a publicist. What is, you mean like you hang out on the red carpet? Well, I've done that. But publicists are not a well-known quantity really to the outside world. They're really not. A good publicist has a client who, whatever it is that they do, gets them media coverage, really. I see myself really as a matchmaker. You know, you have a client who has something to say, or they produce a movie, or they're producing a TV show, or they have a new book. So you have a client with some news. What's your news, client? I just have a new book. Okay, that's the news. So then I'll write up a story, a press release about their news, and then I'll send that to the New York Times or People Magazine or CNN or the LA Times or Entertainment Tonight or whoever it is, and get their interest. And then I'll hook up the client and the media outlet and have them do their thing. And I sit at the next table and drink a Coca-Cola and watch them do their thing. That's what I do. I've generated tens of thousands of articles for clients over my career, more than I could possibly remember. But again, celebrity publicists go to red carpets. They make sure their clients are seen at the right parties. They make sure their female clients are wearing the right dresses with the right jewelry. I don't do that stuff. Personal publicity is very hard. They don't pay a lot of money. And they call you at 3 a.m. and they say, how come I'm not on the cover of People Magazine this week? And they yell at you. I don't do personal publicity. It's not for me. But there are many, many people that do it.
Was there headaches for doing personal publicity that steered you away from that?
Yeah, they call you at 3 a.m. Why the F? Why the F? How come? Why the F am I not on the cover of People Magazine? At home, they'll call you in the middle of the night, yelling and cursing you. I had Jay Leno for 2 years, nicest guy in the world. When I had him, he had a married couple who were his managers. And they were the most heinous, horrible, inhumane humans who ever lived, ever in the history of the world. And they were horrid people. And they would call me every day at the office and curse me. They would just curse me. And I had that for 2 years. And so there's a book and a movie called The Late Shift. And it talks about Jay and his lady manager, Helen. And I lived some of that. When I started my own business, I'm like, there's no way I'm doing celebrities. I'm not going to get cursed at anymore. I had it for 2 years. I'm not doing that.
And obviously this story's been told, but I'm fascinated by it because I am a huge fan of his. But there was a chance meeting you had with Mel Brooks, and you got to mention to him about Mel and your mother going to the same school, and they ended up connecting. So what was that like for you? Because when I think of Mel Brooks, obviously he's a genius. And I always say that I don't think he could do the stuff he came out with today because of the culture we live in.
Right.
But he is an absolute genius. So what was it like interacting with him?
Well, that's a great story. I've met Mel 3 different times. That was the second time you're referring to. Once I met him at a deli. The third time was at Sid Caesar's funeral. But the second time, I was doing PR for a play written and directed by his friend Paul Mazursky. You probably know that name, Paul Mazursky. He was a Hollywood director. He and Mel were good friends. The play was about the Catskill Mountains, where all the Jews go to entertain other Jews. So we did the premiere for this play, Paul Mazursky. I was the publicist for the theater and the play. And my mother had just come into town that afternoon to visit. My mother, she's in a wheelchair now, but she used to come out once a year to visit me for 40 years, pretty much. So I pick her up at the airport, and I'm driving to the theater. I said, Mom, I have a surprise for you. What? What's the surprise? I go, I'm not going to tell you. Because I knew Mel Brooks would be coming. I knew my mother thought he was hysterically funny. And I knew that they went to the same high school. I knew that already. So I got to the theater early. I'm checking people in. Here's a funny story. I'm checking people in at the door. You know Kaylee Cuoco, the cute blonde girl from whatever show she's from, Big Bang Theory. So whatever year this was, she wasn't that famous at the time. So she comes to the door, and I said, name. I go, name, please. And she looks at me. She goes, I'm Kaylee Cuoco. Don't you know who I am? And I looked at her. I said, no, I'd never heard of you in my life. And she was so pissed at me because she was semi-famous at that time. Anyway, so Mel Brooks walks in, and I'm with my mother. I said, Mom, here's the surprise. It's Mel Brooks. She goes, Mel Brooks is here? Really? I love Mel Brooks. I go, I know you do. So I go, Mr. Brooks, this is my mother, Joan. I said, you guys went to the same high school. And he goes, really? So Mel Brooks and my mother went on to speak for at least 15 minutes about Brooklyn and Williamsburg, where they grew up, and they went to the same school. Mel's 8 years older than my mother, so they weren't there at the same time.
That's what I was going to ask.
But in fact, in my book, there's a wonderful picture. If you can see this.
There you go.
Me and my mother with Mel Brooks. And it's like I'm with my parents. It's I love it. It's one of my favorite pictures. But they got along really well. And my mother goes, what a nice man. And she goes, you think I should date him? Because Anne Bancroft, I think, had died already or something. I said, Mom, you live in New Jersey. He lives in Hollywood. What are you going to do?
Oh, yeah. So last 2 questions for you. So is there a funny celebrity story that you always like to tell besides that? But also, what is it like for you on this side of the interview side of things? Because you were always doing it for other people, hence the book, Flirting with Fame.
I'll do the second question first. Yeah, so last summer I started doing interviews of me, like you said. After 40 years of doing it for other people, it was very fun. It was fun and refreshing. And is there someone in the background where you are?
Out in the hall.
That was fun and refreshing, and I appreciated the chance to talk about me and my career because, again, like you said, after you do this for 40 years for other people, it's nice to do something for yourself. And I've had a PR firm out of New York that helped me I actually hired PR people to help me PR my books. So it's been funny. They give me interviews Tuesday at 2 on Skype, and I'm like, okay, cool. So what I've been doing for others for decades, I've had people helping me. So I'd say it's a lot of fun, man. It's been a lot of doing PR. The funniest story I have has to be my Meryl Streep story. My Meryl Streep story is the greatest screw-up story in the history of Hollywood, and no one could ever match it or better it. It's not possible. In 1990, I was the publicist for a TV show called the Time Warner Earth Day Special. And to promote that special, which aired on ABC, Kevin Costner and Meryl Streep were going to do a photo shoot together of a little sapling tree. They held a little sapling tree. It was about the environment, the Earth Day Special. So I'm at this photo shoot in Century City. Kevin Costner's there testing the camera. Nice guy, easy to talk to. He had a little ponytail at the time. And he wasn't super famous yet. It was 1990. He wasn't super famous yet. He was well known.
Pre-Bodyguard, folks.
I think pre-Dances with Wolves is 1990. So whatever movies he'd done, Bull Durham probably, I guess. But he wasn't a superstar, is what I'm saying. So he was there, and I chatted with him briefly. And then I'm talking to a woman named Carla from Warner Brothers TV, who I knew. And we were eating lunch at the buffet lunch table, and we're eating. And there must have been about 25, 30 people there, executives from ABC Television, executives from Warner Brothers Television, and me. That's who was there. So I'm eating lunch with Carla, and then somebody says, somebody in the back goes, she's here. And I go to Carla, my friend, and I said, who's here? And she said, Meryl Streep. I go, Meryl Streep's here? Nobody told me she was coming. I didn't know she was coming. So I thought, wow, Meryl Streep's coming. Now, she was the biggest star in the world at that time. Definitely the biggest, most famous woman, probably next to the Queen of England. Arguably the most famous woman next to the Queen in the world. So everyone starts milling about and getting all nervous and jerky. Meryl's coming. I'm like, so my heart starts beating fast. I'm starting to get a little shaky. And here's the funny part, Jonathan, is I was never a Meryl Streep fan. I never, you know what I mean? This is not Paul McCartney. This is not Mick Jagger. So I don't know why I got nervous, but everyone else was so nervous because Meryl Streep was coming. So all these executives line up in a line at this photo studio, all the Warner Brother people, then all the ABC people, and then my friend Carla, and then me. I'm the last person in this line. Okay? The last person. The door's open. Meryl Streep is all dressed in white. She looks like Mother Mary. The sun is coming in from behind her. And it's like, oh, like the angels are singing from heaven. Oh, Meryl's here. Mother Mary's here. It literally looked like a religious moment when she walked in. And she went down the line like the Queen of England, down the line, each and every person. And it was shaking hands. Ms. Streep, my name is Bill. I'm the head of Warner Brothers. Nice to meet you, Bill. And then it was Joe, and then it was Jane. And right down the line, Miss Streep, an honor to meet you. And she went right down the line. I'm the last person. My friend Carla, keep that in mind. My friend Carla's next. Meryl Streep comes down the line. She goes up to Carla. Carla goes, hi, Miss Streep. It's an honor to meet you. My name is Carla from Warner Brothers. Meryl Streep goes, Carla, so nice to meet you. They shake hands. Now, I'm the last person in the line. Meryl Streep comes to me. I shake her hand, and I actually said, hi, Carla. It's lovely to meet you. My name is Dan. I'm a publicist. Okay, so Meryl Streep went like this. I called Meryl Streep Carla. I called her Carla. I called the most famous woman on the earth the wrong name because I was nervous, and my friend Carla was next to me. I said, hi, Carla. It's very nice to meet you. She went like this, like the RCA Victor dog. Remember him?
Mm-hmm. They were based in Camden, so.
And she pulled her hand away and walked away. And my friend Carla goes, Dan, I feel so sorry for you. I said, why? What do you mean? She goes, you just called Meryl Streep Carla. I said, really? I did? I said, I have no idea that I did that. So the rest of the day, I try to make it up to her and speak to her like a normal person. And every time I walked near her, she would walk away from me. She thought I was Lee Harvey Oswald, probably. So I've told this story to people. I've had people crying, laughing, because who calls Meryl Streep by the wrong name as you're shaking her hand? So that's a hard story. That's a hard story to beat.
Well, speaking of this, and folks, if you want to check out Flirting with Fame or his other books that are out, and even eventually pre-order them when they'll be out next March. I will have all the Amazon links on all outlets of this. But I want to ask, and you mentioned this when we first connected, so I'm curious to know the relationship. You reached out because of hearing my chat with Miss Shelley Herman,
Right.
who also has a book in the same publishing company out of Florida.
Right.
So how did you get connected with Shelley?
Shelley's a friend of mine. We met. Do you know who Mark Summers is?
Yes. Double Dare. I've had him on years ago.
Okay, so Mark Summers is one of my best friends for many years.
Would love to talk to him again, but great guy.
Send me a note and I'll forward it to him, okay?
Thank you. But so Mark is a friend of yours.
Well, Mark is retired with his family in Santa Barbara, but Mark is one of my best friends. So maybe, I think 2 years ago, he said, hey, I have a friend named Shelley Herman who needs help with her book. That's what it was. She needs a publicist for her book that she's working on about Johnny Carson. Can you help? So I reached out to Shelley, and Shelley and I became friends. It's about 2 years ago. Well, when we became friends, I had just gotten my deal for my book, Flirting with Fate. So she sent me her manuscript, and I read it, and I enjoyed it. And I said, Shelley, you reach out to the guy that did my book at Bear Manor Media. His name is Ben.
Great guy. I've dealt with him on a couple of occasions.
So, Shelley would acknowledge this, but I got Shelley her book deal because I presented her to Ben, and Ben gave her the book deal. So we've been friends. She came to several of my book signings last summer. Very loyal, very nice lady. I liked her book a lot. And we've lost touch in the last few weeks because I know she's busy with her book. So yeah, that's how I knew her. I helped her get that book.
Nice. Well, like I said, links will be available to get Flirting with Fame with Dan's story of Hollywood over the 40 plus years of doing what he does. I appreciate the time, sir. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And please stay in touch. Hey there, Friday fans. We know how much you enjoy the movies. Enjoy grabbing your Friday merchandise and interacting with the Friday family, whether it be at conventions or during our particular watch-alongs. Well, when you're looking to get yourself masks, why not check out our friends over at Camp Blood Customs out of New York State and order your specific custom mask from any of the films. All orders are made specifically. Your needs and wants are. Make sure you find Camp Blood Customs on Facebook, Instagram, and all over social media and order yours today.
Hi everybody, this is Shelley Herman, Emmy-nominated TV writer and author of My Peacock Tale, and you're listening to Crazy Train Radio.